Rami had always been curious about the stars. Since his childhood on Earth, he loved hearing stories about faraway planets and strange civilizations. Years later, that curiosity had taken him across light years as a trader. His ship was small, a reliable silver vessel that could slip through asteroid fields and survive sudden storms in space. It was not built for battles, but it was perfect for peaceful trade. On this trip, Rami was on his way to deliver farming supplies to a colony on the edge of known space. The journey had been calm so far. The stars outside his window glimmered, like diamonds in black water. Rami enjoyed these quiet moments when he could think about home, drink hot tea, and imagine what new worlds might look like. But the calm ended suddenly. His ship's sensors began to beep sharply. A strange golden light appeared ahead, spreading wider and wider until it looked like a glowing net in space. Rami tried to steer away, but the light moved with him, stretching and shifting until it wrapped around his ship completely. The control panel flashed warnings in red. The ship shook as if an invisible hand was pulling it. Rami pressed the emergency buttons, but nothing happened. He was being dragged toward a large planet below. From space, the planet looked beautiful, covered in deep blue forests with silver, rivers that sparkled in the sunlight. In the middle of it, a massive golden structure rose like a crown. Rami's ship descended through soft clouds and landed on a wide stone platform. Before he could even stand, the ship's door opened on its own. Tall figures stepped inside. They wore shining armor that reflected the light like mirrors. Their faces were partly hidden by smooth helmets, but their eyes glowed faintly green. One of them spoke in a clear voice. The words were strange at first, but a small translator device in Rami's ear quickly converted them into his language. "You will come with us," the guard said. Rami raised his hands slowly to show he was no threat. "I am only a trader. I came here by accident." The guards did not answer. They gently but firmly guided him out of the ship. The air outside was warm and carried the scent of flowers. Rami noticed that the platform led to a long bridge, and beyond it stood the golden fortress he had seen from space. Its walls were tall and smooth, decorated with carvings of stars and strange symbols. Inside, the halls were wide and bright. The floor was made of polished stone, and tall windows let in light that painted the walls in shades of gold and green. Rami was led through corridor after corridor until they reached a massive chamber. At the far end, on a high seat carved from crystal, sat a figure unlike any Rami had ever seen. She was tall, her skin a rich emerald color that shimmered when she moved. Her silver eyes seemed to look right through him. She wore a crown shaped like leaves and stars, and her long robe flowed across the steps like water. The guards stopped and bowed. Rami stood still, unsure what to do. The figure spoke, her voice calm yet carrying authority. "You are from Earth." "Yes," Rami said carefully. She studied him for a long moment. Then she gave a single order to the guards. "Take him to the dungeon." Before Rami could ask why, the guards took hold of his arms. "I have done nothing." "Wrong," he said quickly. "I came here without knowing," but his words made no difference. The queen, for it was clear she was a ruler, simply raised her hand, and the guards began to lead him away. They walked down long stone stairs into darker parts of the fortress. The air here was cooler, and the walls were plain compared to the bright halls above. The guards stopped at a heavy door, opened it, and guided him inside. The door shut behind him with a low thud. The cell was not what he expected. It was clean, with a small bed, a table, and a cup of water. There was even a narrow window high on the wall that showed a slice of the blue sky. Still, the door was locked, and freedom was far away. Rami sat on the bed, his mind full of questions. Why had the queen brought him here? Why the dungeon instead of a normal guest room? What did she want from him? Hours passed. Rami tried to stay calm, listening to the quiet hum of the fortress. Somewhere far away, a bell rang softly. He wondered if his ship was still safe on the platform or if it had been taken apart. The sound of footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. The heavy door opened, and light spilled into the room. To his surprise, it was not the guards, but the queen, herself, who entered. She stepped inside, her crown catching the light from the window. Her silver eyes watched him closely. "You are wondering why you are here?" she said. "Yes," Rami admitted. "I mean no harm. I am only a trader passing through." The queen nodded slowly, as if she already knew. Then she said something that made Rami's heart skip. "If you wish to leave this place and remain free in my lands, there is one way. You must marry me." Rami stared at her, certain he had heard wrong, but her calm expression told him she was serious. "You have one day to decide," she said, turning toward the door. "Until then, you will remain here." With that, she left, the heavy door closing behind her once again. Rami sat in silence, his mind racing. He had traveled to many strange worlds, but nothing in his life had prepared him for this. Rami could not sleep that night. The queen's words kept echoing in his mind. Marry her? Why would a powerful ruler choose a stranger from another world for such an important matter? It made no sense. He paced the small cell, the sound of his steps soft against the smooth stone floor. The dungeon was quiet, except for the occasional faint drip of water somewhere far away. Through the high, narrow window, he could see a small patch of the night sky. It was filled with more stars than he had ever seen from Earth. They twinkled gently, almost as if they were watching him. Rami tried to reason with himself. Maybe the queen's statement had been symbolic. Perhaps marry meant something different in her culture. But the way she had looked at him, calm, certain, and without hesitation, told him she meant every word exactly as she had spoken it. Morning came slowly. Light streamed through the tiny window, painting the cell in pale gold. The door creaked open and two guards entered. One carried a tray with food, a bowl of warm grain, slices of sweet fruit, and a cup of clear water. They set it down without speaking and left just as silently. Rami ate slowly, his mind still turning over every possible reason for this situation. He had traveled to worlds where customs were strange to humans, but this was the first time someone had offered him freedom in exchange for marriage. A few hours later, the sound of approaching footsteps made him look up. The heavy door opened. Again, and this time the queen stood there. She wore a long robe of deep green silk, and her crown shimmered like sunlight on water. The guards stayed outside while she stepped into the room. "You have questions," she said. Rami stood. "Yes." "Many questions. Why me? Why marriage? I am only a trader. I am not from your world. I am not of your people." The queen studied him for a moment before answering. "I do not choose without reason. In my land, leaders must act for the survival of the realm. There is an ancient law that has guided us for centuries. It says that a ruler must join in union with one who is not of their own kind before the end of their 10th year of reign. Without this union, the ruler's right to lead ends, and the throne passes to rival hands." Rami frowned. "You mean this is about a law, not about me as a person?" "It is both," the queen said calmly. "You are here, brought by the pull of fate. Out of all the beings who could have been caught in our net, it was you. That is, not chance. It is the stars guiding the path." Her voice was steady, but there was a weight in her tone that Rami noticed. It was the sound of someone who had the burden of an entire nation on their shoulders. "And if you lose the throne?" Rami asked carefully. She looked away toward the window. "If I lose the throne, my land will fall to those who care more for power than peace. The rival lords will fight among themselves. Villages will burn, rivers will run dry, and my people will suffer. That is why I cannot fail this law." Rami thought about her words. He could see the seriousness in her eyes. Yet still, the thought of marrying a stranger in a foreign world felt impossible. "I understand your need," he said slowly, "but marriage, in my culture, is not something to agree to so quickly. It is meant to be a bond built over time." The queen tilted her head slightly. "In my culture, marriage is not the same as in yours. Here it is a public alliance, a vow to protect each other's people and to lead with shared purpose. It does not demand closeness of the heart unless both wish it. It is a promise to stand together before all eyes." That made Rami pause. If what she said was true, then this was less about romance and more about leadership and politics. Still, the responsibility would be enormous. He had come here to trade, not to rule. "I cannot answer now," he said. "I need time to think." "You have until the next sunset," the queen replied. "After that, the decision must be made." She turned and left the cell, her robe trailing behind her like flowing water. The heavy door closed again, leaving Rami in silence once more. The rest of the day passed slowly. Rami walked the small space of the cell again and again, trying to think of a way out of this situation. If he refused, would she truly keep him here forever? And if he accepted, could he live with the weight of a role he had never wanted? By late afternoon, he sat on the bed with his head in his hands. He thought about the people she had spoken of: villagers, farmers, children who might suffer if rival lords took power. If her words were true, then this was about more than just his freedom. It was about the peace of an entire world. The faint sound of movement outside the cell made him look up. An old alien figure appeared at the bars of the small window in the door. His skin was pale gold, and his eyes were a softer shade of green than the guards. He wore simple robes and carried a small staff. "You are the human," the old figure said in a gentle voice. "The queen has chosen you." "Yes," Rami replied quietly. "She says it is the only way to keep her throne." The old one nodded slowly. "It is true. I have served in this palace since before she was born. She is wise and kind, but the law is older than her and older than me. The lords wait for her to fail so they may fight over her lands. If she does not wed a being from beyond this world, her rule will end." Rami felt a knot in his chest. The old man's words carried no hint of trickery. This was real. "She told me marriage here is an alliance," Rami said. "That it does not mean what it means on my world." "That is also true," the old man said. "But it is not without responsibility. You will be seen as her partner in all matters of state. The people will look to you for guidance. And in return, you will share in her protection and her authority." The old man stepped back from the door. "Think well, traveler. The choice you make will change not only your life, but the life of this world." Then he was gone, his soft footsteps fading into the distance. Rami lay back on the bed, staring at the narrow strip of orange sky as the sun began to set. He knew that when night came again, he would have to give his answer. The sun had set, and the cell was now lit only by the faint glow of the moon through the high window. Rami sat on the bed, his thoughts heavy. Soon he would have to give the queen his answer. His mind was filled with questions, but the biggest one remained. Why him? Out of all the beings in the universe, why would fate or law choose him? He had just begun to close his eyes when he heard a faint voice. "Human," the voice whispered. Rami sat up quickly and looked around. The sound had come from the far wall of his cell. He stepped closer and noticed that there was a narrow opening near the ground, not large enough for a person, but enough to see a shadow moving on the other. "Side, you can hear me?" the voice asked again, low and careful. Yes, Rami replied softly. Who are you? I am Taren, the voice said. I have been in this place for many seasons. I was once a scholar in the palace. I knew the old laws before they were forgotten by most. Rami knelt near the small opening. Then you know why the queen says I must marry her. There was a pause. Yes, Taren answered. The law is not a story made to frighten or to amuse. It is real. Long ago, our people were not united. There were many rulers, each fighting for power. The war ended only when the first great queen made a vow. She would bind her bloodline to one from beyond our stars every 10th generation. That bond was seen as a sign of peace and strength. It reminded the lords that our world must look outward, not inward, for growth. Rami thought about this. So the queen has no choice. She has little choice, Taren said. But there is more. The rival lords you have not met wait for her to fail. They are patient, but their patience is nearly gone. If she does not find one from beyond our stars before the season ends, they will claim her unfit to rule. Then the council will be broken, and war will return. Rami leaned his head against the cool stone wall. And you, why are you in here? I spoke too freely about the dangers of the lords, Taren replied. They feared my words would stir the people. So I was locked away. But I have seen many visitors pass through this place, and you are the first human in many years. Rami glanced toward the door, making sure no guards were near. If I agree to this alliance, this marriage, what would it mean for me? It would mean you are no longer only a traitor, Taren said. You would be a symbol. The people would look to you as proof that the stars are still with us. The queen would expect you to stand beside her in council, to speak for peace when others speak for war. Your voice could save this world, or it could break it. That was a heavy thought. Rami had never been more than a traveler, a man who traded goods between ports and lived quietly. Now, he was being told that his words could decide the fate of a whole planet. I do not know if I am ready for that, Rami admitted. Few are ready for the paths that change history, Taren said, but sometimes we are placed on them anyway. You must ask yourself, is your own freedom worth more than the peace of an entire world? Rami fell silent. A sudden noise broke the quiet. The heavy door to his cell opened, and a guard stepped inside. He carried a small lantern, its light warm against the cool stone walls. The queen will see you at sunrise, the guard said. Your answer will be given then. Rami nodded slowly. The guard left, and the door shut again. The cell seemed darker now, the small window showing only a thin sliver of moonlight. He returned to the wall, but Taren's voice did not come again. Either the scholar had gone to rest, or he knew that further talk might be overheard. Rami lay on the bed, his mind restless. He thought of Earth, of the simple life he had left behind, of markets filled with friendly faces and the sound of coins clinking into his pouch. He thought of the queen, proud, calm, and burdened with the fate of her people. He thought of Taren's words about the lords and the danger they posed. At some point, his thoughts drifted into dreams. He saw himself walking through the blue forests of this planet, speaking with its people. He saw the queen standing beside him in a grand hall, her crown shining, the crowd cheering. He also saw fire in the distance, rivers drying, and villages falling into shadow. When morning came, the dreams faded, but the images stayed in his mind. The door opened again, and 2 guards entered. It is time, one of them said. Rami followed them through the long stone corridors, climbing the stairs back into the bright upper halls of the fortress. The air was warmer here, filled with the faint scent of flowers from the gardens beyond. The walls They entered a smaller chamber than the one he had first seen, but it was no less grand. Tall windows let in the morning light, and a round table stood in the center, covered in maps and scrolls. The queen stood beside it, looking out, at the gardens. When she turned to face him, her silver eyes met his without hesitation. "The time has come," she said. "Have you decided?" Rami took a deep breath. "I have spoken with one who knows your laws. I understand more now than I did yesterday. I know the choice is not simple. If I refuse, your people may suffer. If I accept, I take on a duty I never planned for." The queen listened silently. "I cannot give you an answer without one thing," Rami continued. "I must know your world better. If I am to stand beside you as a partner, I must understand your people, their needs, and their hopes. I will not agree blindly." The queen's expression softened slightly. "You ask for wisdom before action. That is rare. Very well. You shall see my lands, and you will speak to my people. Then, when you have seen with your own eyes, you will give me your answer." Rami nodded. This was not yet a decision, but it was a path forward. The queen gestured to the guards. "Prepare him for the journey. He will leave the fortress tomorrow." As the guards led Rami away, he glanced once more at the maps on the table and wondered what challenges lay in the blue forests and silver rivers beyond the walls. Somewhere in the dark below, Taran was waiting in his cell, perhaps hoping that the human would choose to change the fate of this world. The next morning, Rami stood in the courtyard of the Golden Fortress. The early light painted the walls in warm shades, and the air was filled with the faint sound of birds hidden in the nearby blue forests. The queen had kept her word. Instead of being locked in the cell, Rami now wore a light travel cloak and stood beside two guards who would guide him. Before they set out, the queen appeared. She was dressed more simply than before, wearing a robe the color of the morning sky. Without her crown, she looked less like a distant ruler and more like a person burdened by many worries. "You will travel across my lands," she said to Rami. "You will see my people and learn what they value. When you return, you will know whether your heart can accept this role." Rami bowed his head slightly. "I will look with open eyes and listen with open ears." The queen studied him for a moment, as if deciding whether she could trust his words. Then she spoke in a quieter voice, so the guards would not hear. "I will tell you something I have not told others. The lords are not only waiting for me to fail the law, they are already moving against me. They have begun to close their ports to my ships. They send false rumors to villages saying I am weak and unfit. If their voices grow louder, the council may believe them." Rami frowned. "So the danger is already here?" "Yes," the queen said. "Every day I wait, the risk grows. That is why time matters. But I will not bind you to me without your understanding." Rami respected her honesty. This was not simply about tradition or prophecy. It was about survival in a dangerous political game. The guards led him out of the fortress gates and the journey began. The road wound through rolling green hills and fields of silver-leaf plants that shimmered under the sunlight. The first village they reached was small, with round houses built from pale stone and roofs covered in woven blue reeds. Children played near a fountain, and elders sat in the shade, speaking in quiet voices. When the villagers saw Rami, they looked curious, but not fearful. One elder stepped forward. "You are not from here," she said. Rami nodded. "I come from another world. The queen sent me to see your lands." The elder's expression softened. "If the queen sent you, then you are welcome." She invited him to share a meal of warm bread and sweet fruit. As they ate, the elder spoke of how the village lived in peace for many years under the queen's rule. But then her voice lowered. Lately, traders from the north no longer come. They say the lords there do not trust the queen. We do not know why. If trade stops, our stores will grow thin. Rami listened closely, remembering the queen's words about ports being closed. This was not a distant rumor. It was already affecting the people. The journey continued through forests where the leaves were deep blue and the air smelled of fresh rain. In a larger town, Rami met builders working on a new bridge over a wide silver river. They spoke proudly of their work, but when he asked if they had the supplies they needed, one worker shook his head. The wood we ordered from the west has not arrived. The lords there say they have none to spare, but we think they simply wish to slow our work. Again, the signs of quiet resistance were clear. As the days passed, Rami spoke to farmers tending fields of tall grain, healers mixing, medicines from rare herbs, and traders selling cloth in markets filled with bright colors. Most people praised the queen for keeping peace and protecting them from the greed of rival rulers. But more than once, he heard whispers of fear, that the lords were growing bold, that the queen might lose her throne, that the old days of conflict could return. One evening, as they camped near the edge of a forest, Rami sat by the fire and thought about all he had seen. The queen's situation was worse than he had first believed. The lords were not just waiting, they were slowly pulling apart the ties that held her world together. The next morning, the guards led him to the final stop of his journey, a coastal city where tall towers rose above the waves. The harbor was almost empty, with only a few fishing boats tied to the docks. A dock worker told Rami that ships from other regions had not come for weeks. The sea is open, but the Lord's ships stay away, he said. It is not the weather keeping them, it is politics. Rami walked along the quiet pier, the salty air cool against his face. He imagined what would happen if the queen truly lost power. The small villages would lose their trade. The builders would lose their supplies. The healers would lose the herbs they could only find through far-off merchants. The whole land would weaken. By the time the journey ended and they returned to the Golden Fortress, Rami's mind was clear. He now understood that the queen's proposal had little to do with personal choice and everything to do with keeping her world from falling apart. When he stood before her again, she waited silently for him to speak. I have seen your people, Rami said. I have heard their worries. You were honest with me. The lords are already acting against you. If they win, your world will break. The queen nodded. And now you know why I asked you to stay. I do, Rami said. But before I give you my answer, I must tell you my condition. If I agree to stand beside you, it will not be only as a symbol for your people. I will also work to open the ports again, to bring back the trade your villages need. This alliance must not just hold your throne, it must give your people a future. The queen's silver eyes softened. If that is your promise, then I will welcome it. We will stand together for the good of both our worlds. Rami did not answer yet. The choice was close, but he would not speak it until he was fully ready, for now he knew only this. The queen's true problem was not a law written in the past. It was the danger growing in the present, and the future of her people depended on what he decided next. Rami stood before the queen once again. The golden light of the throne room shimmered around her, but her eyes were calm and steady. This time he was no longer the frightened prisoner in the dungeon. He had walked through her lands and seen the challenges her people faced. Now it was time for him to speak his mind clearly. I have thought about what you asked, Rami began. If I agree to marry you and stand by your side, I will do it to help your people. But I cannot accept this role without understanding what it means for me and what I can do to help. The queen listened without interrupting. Her hands rested gently on the arms of her crystal throne. Speak your terms, she said softly. Rami took a deep breath. Marriage in my culture is more than a ceremony. It is a partnership where both sides share respect and work together. I need to know what marriage means here. What will be expected of me?" The queen nodded. "Marriage here is an alliance. It joins two beings in a bond of trust and duty. You will be seen as my partner in leadership. You will share in decisions, in protection of the land, and in care for our people. But it is not a bond forced on the heart. Friendship and trust will grow with time," Rami thought carefully. "That is good to hear. I want to be more than a symbol. I want to help your people in real ways. My first condition is this. If I marry you, I will work to reopen trade routes that have been closed. I want to bring back supplies, medicine, and tools your villages need. I want to connect your world to others, including Earth, so we can grow together." The queen's eyes brightened with hope. "That would be a great gift to our people." Rami continued, "My second condition is trust. I need freedom to speak with your people directly. I want to listen to their needs and ideas. I want to show them that I come not only as a ruler, but as a friend." The queen smiled softly. "That is wise. Leaders must know their people." Rami bowed his head. "If you accept these conditions, I will agree to marry you. But I must ask one more thing." The queen raised her eyebrows in silent question. "I must prove that I am worthy of this role. I ask a chance to show your people that I can be their partner, that I can help them, and that I respect their ways." The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she stood and approached him, her hand reaching out. "You have spoken honestly and wisely. I accept your conditions. Tomorrow you will begin the test." Rami took her hand and felt a strange warmth. The moment was not about ceremony, but about trust. Trust between two very different worlds. The next morning, Rami left the fortress with 2 guards. This time, he traveled not as a prisoner, but as a guest and representative of the queen. His first stop was a small farming village where fields of silver grain waved gently in the wind. The villagers welcomed him with cautious smiles. Rami spoke to the farmers, asking about their lives, their challenges, and their hopes for the future. They told him about the lack of tools and medicine since the lords had closed the trade routes. Rami promised he would work to bring help soon. Next, he visited a school where children learned under the shade of tall trees. The teacher welcomed him warmly and shared stories about the children's dreams of peace and friendship with other worlds. Rami smiled, feeling a new kind of hope stirring inside him. Each day brought new meetings. In one town, he helped mediate a dispute between traders over limited supplies. In another, he listened as healers explained how rare herbs were harder to find because of trade blockades. Wherever he went, Rami worked to build trust. He did not pretend to know everything. When asked difficult questions, he answered honestly. When he did not understand customs, he asked respectfully. People began to see him not as a stranger, but as someone who cared. One evening, as the sun dipped below the blue forests, a group of villagers gathered around a campfire with Rami. They shared stories of their ancestors and sang songs of hope. Rami joined in, his voice low but steady. For the first time, he felt he belonged in this world, not as a prisoner or visitor, but as a partner. Back at the fortress, the queen waited for news. When Rami returned after several days, he reported what he had learned and promised to continue working to reopen the ports. The queen's smile was bright, but her eyes held the weight of her worries. "You have done well," she said. "But the lords are still watching. They do not like what they see." Rami nodded. "I know. That is why we must act quickly. We must show your people and the lords that unity is stronger than division." Together, they planned their next steps, to send messages of peace and trade to the rival lords and to invite leaders from other regions to meet in the Golden Fortress. It was a bold plan, but Rami felt ready. That night, as Rami lay in his room, He thought about the journey ahead. He was no longer just a trader. He was a part of something greater, a chance to bring peace between worlds and protect the people who had shown him kindness. The choice to marry the queen was no longer just about freedom. It was about hope, trust, and the power of unity. The sun rose slowly over the golden fortress, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Rami stood at the gates, ready to begin the next step of his journey. Today, the queen would test whether he could truly represent her people. It was a challenge, not of battle or strength, but of heart and wisdom. 2 guards waited beside him. They led him through the bustling streets of the nearby city. People paused their daily work to look at the stranger walking among them. Rami noticed some faces filled with hope, others with doubt. The queen's voice echoed in his mind. To lead is to listen. Their first stop was a large market square. Merchants sold fruits, fabrics, and tools from many places. But there was tension in the air. A group of traders stood arguing loudly. Rami stepped closer and saw that the dispute was over a shipment of medicine delayed by the rival lords. Rami raised his hands gently. "Let us speak calmly," he said. The traders turned to him, surprised by his calm voice. "I understand this. Medicine is needed," Rami said. "Let us find a fair way to share what we have until new supplies arrive." He listened carefully to both sides. Then, with the help of a local leader, they agreed to distribute the medicine fairly based on need. The traders nodded, relief washing over their faces. "This is the way of peace," Rami said softly. "Fairness and respect bring strength." Word of his fairness spread quickly. People began to gather, curious about the human who spoke for kindness and justice. Next, Rami was taken to visit a healer's home. The healer, a woman with silver hair and bright eyes, showed him herbs and potions she made to help the sick. "Our plants are hard to find now," she explained. "The rival lords have blocked trade routes. Without new herbs, many will suffer. Rami promised to work to reopen these routes. Your people deserve medicine and care," he said. "I will do what I can." The healer smiled. "Your words give hope." Days passed as Rami traveled from village to village. He helped solve problems, listened to worries, and shared ideas. He did not pretend to be a great leader, but his honesty and kindness won many hearts. One afternoon, near a silver river, a group of young farmers invited Rami to join their work. They showed him how they planted seeds and cared for the land. "This river feeds us all," one farmer said. "If the lords take control of the water, our fields will dry." Rami nodded. "I will speak to the queen about protecting the river. Water is life." That night, as Rami sat by a fire under the blue-leafed trees, he felt a quiet strength growing inside him. He was becoming more than a traveler. He was becoming a partner in hope. Back at the fortress, the queen waited anxiously. When Rami returned, she asked, "How did your journey go?" "I have seen the heart of your people," Rami replied. "They are strong but afraid. They need peace and fair trade. They need to know that their voices matter." The queen smiled softly. "You have passed the test." "But there is still danger," Rami said. "The rival lords will not give up easily. We must prepare." Together, they planned to send messages of peace and cooperation to the lords. They would invite leaders from other regions to meet in the fortress and discuss a future without war. The queen placed a hand on Rami's shoulder. "You are no longer just a visitor. You are a symbol of unity." Rami looked into her silver eyes and saw hope shining there. That night, Rami dreamed of stars and rivers, of peaceful markets and singing children. He knew the road ahead would be hard, but he also knew that with trust and kindness, even the darkest times could change. The Golden Fortress was alive with light and color. Flags waved gently in the warm breeze, and the air was filled with the sound of music and laughter. Today was the day the Queen and Rami would make their union known to the people and to the rival lords. Rami stood beside the Queen in the great hall. The walls were decorated with tapestries that told stories of past rulers and brave deeds. The room was filled with people, villagers, traders, scholars, and nobles from many lands. All had come to witness this important moment. The Queen wore her crown proudly, but her smile was soft and full of hope. She looked at Rami and nodded. This was more than a ceremony. It was a promise of peace. Rami felt a mix of nerves and strength. He had never imagined standing here, but now he understood why fate had brought him to this place. He was not just a visitor. He was part of a future that could bring light to many. The Queen raised her hand and spoke clearly, her voice carrying through the hall. People of this land and honored guests from distant regions, today we make a vow not just of marriage, but of unity and hope. I join with Rami, a traveler from another world, to stand together for the good of all. The crowd listened in silence, then slowly began to applaud. Some faces showed surprise, others joy, but all eyes were fixed on the new alliance. Rami stepped forward and spoke, his voice steady. I come from a distant world, but I now call this place home. I promise to work with the Queen to bring peace, to open trade, and to listen to the voices of all. Together we will build a future where no one lives in fear. The applause grew louder. People smiled and spoke to one another, hopeful for the first time in many seasons. In the days that followed, the Queen and Rami sent messages to the rival lords, inviting them to peace talks in the fortress. Some lords accepted, curious to see the strength of this new alliance. Others remained silent, unsure of what to do. Rami traveled with the Queen to meet with these leaders. He spoke honestly about the need for cooperation and respect. He shared stories of Earth and how different peoples could live together in harmony. Slowly, walls of suspicion began to crumble. In one meeting, a stern lord spoke harshly. Why should we trust a stranger from another world? Rami replied calmly. Because I stand not only for myself, but for the people who want peace. Trust begins with a willingness to listen. The Lord looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slightly. Back in the villages, trade began to return. Ships sailed again to bring medicine, tools, and food. Markets buzzed with new life. People worked together to rebuild what had been lost. One morning, as Rami walked through a busy market, a child ran up and handed him a small flower. For you, the child said shyly. Rami smiled and knelt down. Thank you. This means more than you know. The child beamed and ran back to play. Rami realized then that this world was no longer a strange place. It was a home he could protect and love. The Queen and Rami stood together on the fortress balcony as the sun set, painting the sky with pink and gold. Below, the people celebrated in the streets. The Queen turned to Rami and said softly, You have brought hope where there was fear. You have proven that even the smallest voice can make a difference. Rami took her hand gently. And you have shown me the strength of your people and your heart. Together, they looked toward the stars that glittered in the deepening sky. Two very different worlds had come together to create a new beginning. The story of the human and the alien queen became a legend told for generations. It was a tale of courage, trust, and the power of unity. It showed that when different worlds come together, they can overcome any challenge.